besthotgrill.com. Besthotgrill.com.
Now, more than ever, you need information. Here, when you need us. 860 AM, The Answer. KTRV San Francisco. Streaming now on smart speakers and the Odyssey app, service of Salem Media Group. This is 860 AM, The Answer.
Sponsored by The Way to My Heart Incorporated.
Welcome to the Heart of Innovation. 60 minutes that could save life and limb, with new breakthrough ideas and innovation changing the healthcare landscape. Brought to you by patient advocacy group thewaytomyheart.org in partnership with Abbott. Here are your hosts for the Heart of Innovation, Emmy Award-winning journalist and founder of The Way to My Heart, Kim McNicholas, and interventional cardiologist and founder of the Save My Piggies Health Education Series, Dr. John Phillips.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to the show. Kevin Morgan is truly a force to be reckoned with as a former veterinarian, PhD, author, and just world-class athlete who is persevering despite being dealt DNA that led to aortic disease and peripheral artery disease. Since learning of his AAA and PAD, he has been committed to researching and trying ways to overcome these vascular diseases through strengthening his mind and his body. And during this show, he is going to share his methods that would have helped him to overcome the mental challenges and physical challenges to maintaining his ability to be a world-class athlete. So I'm really excited, Dr. John Phillips, for this story of Kevin Morgan. He has been on before. He shared his actual journey to diagnosis and treatment and perseverance in a previous Save My Piggies episode. But now, since it is Mental Health Awareness Month, we want to talk about his mental fight every day and challenges he faces at 80 plus years old to persevere with these vascular diseases and continue to be that world-class athlete that he has been.
First and foremost, good afternoon and good morning for those of you, I guess, on the West Coast, Miss Kimberly. You had said that you were going to be potentially tackling some pigeons during the show, so that should be interesting. This is a great show topic because it dovetails on what we discussed last week, since we focused on kind of resilience. I love getting into people's minds and understanding how they tick, particularly those that struggle with chronic diseases like peripheral arterial disease. We have mentioned in the past that PAD is kind of like cancer in the sense that it doesn't go away. We are always trying to push it away from, keep it in check. And as soon as you give it an inch, it'll take a mile. And so you have to be resilient. So I'm looking forward to the show. I know you were kind enough to send me 2 of Kevin's books that I've been looking at. Got a lot of interesting content that I want to ask him about. So I'm really excited. I hope we have a good show.
Yeah, the 2 books, you can find them on Amazon. How to Train for Aging. That was one. And also How to Fight the Crippling Pain of Peripheral Artery Disease. And so in both of those books, he does address the mental challenges that he has faced every step of the way. It's interesting because we have a network of patients with peripheral artery disease that are constantly, communicating on a daily basis. And one of the challenges I know that Kevin has faced in posting in the groups all of his milestones is that people say, well, you're not relatable, that you're just on a whole different level than all of us. You can't relate to any of us. And I thought it was really important to bring him on this show today because actually he can relate. And actually it is a fight for him every single day. And he struggles just like with anyone else. And I think it's important for people to know that just, based on what you see out there online isn't necessarily the whole story. And so I think it's important for Kevin to share his whole truth. And I think it'll inspire so many people with peripheral artery disease who can do the same, hopefully through his inspiration.
Two comments. Number one, love the ring on your left hand there. That's pretty stylish. That's
It's
cool.
my mom's. I felt a
Oh,
need, with Mother's Day recently. It's just I've missed
yeah.
my mom a lot this week. And
Yeah.
so my dad let me wear her rings. And my grandmother was an opal. So this one was handed down from my grandmother she was an October baby to my mom, and she always treasured it. And so since Mother's Day, I've just really wanted to be close to my mom.
That's a
So she
fantastic,
also lost
fantastic
her life
tribute.
to aortic disease.
Exactly.
So,
Exactly.
you know,
And then the other comment that I wanted to make was it's fascinating. I don't know if that's the right term, but that people think Kevin isn't relatable. Obviously, he's an elite athlete, but you don't just become an elite athlete overnight. It takes, particularly without just peripheral arterial disease. Our guest last week, what Mike struggled with, and you just have to keep working. And I see it every day in patients that you just have to get that inertia away from them
yeah.
and try to hopefully motivate them somehow. But you have to motivate yourself. You've got to get out of bed every morning. And we've talked about this before. There's two types of pain in life, the pain of regret and the pain of discipline. And I think the pain of regret hurts more than the latter.
Yeah, and some don't realize it because they can't get to that point, right?
Right.
To where they
I
have that.
understand.
But you were mentioning Mike Pulowski, who is a former pro athlete. He was on a Florida pro team. He's also still the voice of the UC Berkeley Bears, the football team. He was a former quarterback for that team. And during last week's show, if you haven't checked it out, he was talking about his struggles with a chronic lung illness that he developed as a child and how he persevered over that. But then, going forward, a lot of people didn't realize he had so much success, on the field, and then his TV career and everything else. But then his life just seemed to fall apart, and he ended up with terrible anxiety that he would still have to put on a happy face in front of people, just outward facing. And he was really struggling inside. And I felt blessed that he shared that with us, but he also talked about how he was able to work through that and create additional mental toughness. And that's hopefully also what Kevin is going to be able to share with us, today, that life is a struggle over and over every single moment of every day. There are different struggles that we face. And every single one of these struggles helps us to create the mental toughness. And so we're going to get into meeting Kevin in just a moment. Why don't we take an early break so we can get back as quick as possible and start Kevin's story? And hopefully he'll inspire you as much as he's inspired us. So stay with us.
Leg health can indicate risk.
Everyone's clear on that side.
Okay,
Well said.
Kevin,
Well said,
you are
Kim.
up.
Well said.
Huh?
You ready for
I
me?
said,
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, baby. We're ready.
Okay.
Where's your lovely bride?
Oh, Sushi's in the other room with 5 of our 6 animals. I don't have a professional studio here. I'm in my bedroom, our bedroom. Anyway, in terms, I haven't prepared a detailed lecture or anything like that. Just going to tell the story. And a good thing to do is if you interrupt with questions as I go along, that would be good. How long do you want me to talk?
Well, no, this is just a Q&A. This isn't a monologue. So we
Okay,
ask you questions.
Okay, the first thing you talked about was mental toughness. Most of the problems with both aortic disease and peripheral arterial disease are mental. It's very easy to give up. And what surprised me the most is how little input I've received from physicians. They fixed my AAA back in 2010 with a stent, and I really appreciate that. But when I asked how the surgeon felt about me doing Ironman with a AAA stent graft, he just said I would go easy at first, and that was all I got.
Okay. Well, we're not quite on the, I don't want you to waste your breath. We're waiting for
30
to come
seconds
back
till we
from
air.
break. 30 seconds till we're back on air. So we have to go to break. So if you're looking at your chat, he has actual time cues for us to show us when we're going to break, so you can see when we're going to break.
Okay, I'm not used to this system, I guess.
No
we doing
worries.
a
We're live.
inspiration?
We're actually live on the radio.
So shall
10
I
seconds
continue?
till we're live.
So hold on, because we're going to come back.
And unapologetic. Salem News Channel. We're the answer to the mainstream media. Learn more at snc.tv. This is 860 AM, The Answer.
Welcome back to the Heart of Innovation. For more on today's topic, go to theheartofinnovation.org. That's theheartofinnovation.org. Once again, here's Emmy Award-winning journalist Kim McNicholas and interventional cardiologist Dr. John Phillips.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the show. Since it's Mental Health Awareness Month, we want to talk to Kevin Morgan, who's overcome so much physically and mentally to become a world-class athlete at 80 plus years old, still suffering from aortic disease and peripheral artery disease. And he has 2 books on Amazon. One is How to Train for Aging, and 2, How to Fight the Crippling Pain of Peripheral Artery Disease, both very inspirational books that offer tangible, actionable ways in which hopefully you can do as he's done, which is to overcome any sort of limitations provided by these types of diseases so you can persevere and live a better quality of life as well. But it's not as easy as it sounds. Kevin Morgan, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate you. We appreciate all you've overcome and the success that you've had. But I know it's still a fight every day. But thank you for being here.
Yes, I think it's I have disadvantages and advantages. My disadvantages were I was born during a war. I had rickets as a kid, so I have fairly weak bones. And also, I have a genetic hyperlipidemia, which is what called for PAD. Those are the disadvantages. My real advantages, I think, is I enjoy sports and always have. And as a veterinarian, I have medical training, so I can think my way through the solution to challenging problems. For instance, with the AAA, I had a stent graft inserted, and I modified my training to protect my stent. So the trick is you have to be consistent. You have to get all the help you can from doctors and surgeons. But once you leave their facilities, it's really up to you to work out what you can do and what you can do safely. So that's been pretty important. It's helped me with both AAA, for which I modified the way I rode my bike to minimize hip flexion. And with PAD, I worked through a series of modifications to improve blood flow to, through, and back from my feet. And you might wonder how I did that. I asked the surgeon if he could do an angioplasty or a stent, and he said it's much too dangerous to do that for my popliteal artery. And so basically he said I should do 3 30-minute walks a week. Well, that's not really the way I train. I'm still doing half Ironman and attempting full Ironman distance races. So I thought it through. And the first thing I realized was I need to minimize impact so as to prevent the reverse shock wave, preventing blood to my feet. But what turned out to be most useful at the end of the day was, 1, spreading my toes with yoga toes and keeping my toes spread wide, because this separates your metatarsal bones and there are blood vessels that run between those bones. So by separating your toes, you spread your feet. Number 2, have a wide toe box shoe, whether it's for walking or running. And number 3, never wear tube socks. They create lateral compression of your foot, worst possible thing. And then thirdly, learn to use the muscles of your feet. And this you do by flexing your toes. Just imagine picking up a towel with your toes and then using your whole foot. And this will dramatically improve both blood flow through your feet, which I've discovered over the last 8 years. This is why I'm still able to compete. And more importantly, it contracts muscles in your calves, which improves venous return because the veins in your legs have got valves. So when you contract the muscles, that helps pump blood back to the heart, reducing resistance for blood flowing out of your feet. Is that clear?
Yeah, and I'm curious, just taking us back to the very beginning, because doctors say that the best way to prevent and stop progression from any sort of vascular disease is exercise, 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 walk, walk, walk. What was that reaction that you had when the doctor said, well, you have these vascular diseases, and yet you're incredibly active? And I'm curious if the doctors had told you, especially when you were diagnosed with PAD, that you needed to just walk, walk, walk. and come back in a few months if you don't feel any sort of symptom relief, as they tell to all these other patients. But we do have a number of people like you that exercise, but because of bad DNA, still end up with peripheral artery disease. So I'm curious, from your perspective, you had to have that, oh my gosh, what the heck type of moment where I have been exercising. How in the world did I end up progressing to this point with blocked arteries?
Actually, Kevin, before you answer that question, can you clarify, did you actually have peripheral arterial disease from blockages, or did you have a popliteal aneurysm? Because aneurysm.
I actually do have, I was recently diagnosed with an aneurysm, popliteal aneurysm, a few weeks ago, but that's never been mentioned before. I got pretty well 100% blockage of my right popliteal through ABI test and ultrasound. And my right foot is essentially living on collaterals that I've grown through training. It kind of surprised what gets me is the tech, who I think was not a nurse manager. Anyway, she was very surprised at the level of my collaterals, how extensive they were. And yet, when I go to see the surgeon who's seen the report, there's no discussion, no interest. There's zero interest. Like, I do not understand why I'm getting zero interest in what I've done through my medical training to improve blood flow past an almost 100% blockage on the right, and those data are online, and a pretty severe blockage on the left. But this all comes about because of my hypertriglyceridemia that I diagnosed in my lab about when I was in my 30s. At that time, we discovered, because I was doing a lot of hematology, that we need some plasma for some platelet function studies. The tech came back and said, "What have you been eating?" She showed me my plasma. It was like clotted cream. My fasting triglyceride was over 2,000, and my HDL was less than 20. I immediately realized this was a serious problem. I modified my diet. I knew little about the effect of exercise on hypertriglyceridemia at that time. I was talking a long time ago. I saw physicians eventually, and they wanted to put me on statins, which makes no sense. Statins block HMG-CoA reductase, which is the first step of cholesterol biosynthesis. I had a hypertriglyceridemia, not a hypercholesterolemia. I find it very difficult to engage these kinds of physicians in logical debate about biochemistry, exercise. I think they're just busy. I don't think they're bad people. They're just busy as hell. They're busy saving people's lives. Anyway, it wasn't in my early 50s. I managed with diet to get my triglycerides down to around about 500 and my HDL up to around about 30. I undertook Ironman training because my son got me into it. Within 1 year of full Ironman training, which is a lot of exercise, my triglycerides were down below 150 and my HDL was 80. Just exercise. That amount of exercise completely corrected my dyslipidemia. And so, but I knew, when we were talking 30 years ago, so I knew with my kind of dyslipidemia, I was going to have problems with vascular occlusion eventually. And now I'm 80 years old, and 81 next month. I'm not at all surprised that that the chickens came home to roost on that. And it was 8 years ago I first saw clinical problems. 7 years ago I had the ABI test, which confirmed it. It's still slowly progressing, but I'm actively building collaterals, and I'm actively investigating ways to improve flow by modifying the way I work out. And this business, I would say the thing that's helped me the most is contracting my toes. So what I do is I kind of drag myself along the ground with my feet, which toughens up these muscles it strengthens enormously the muscles in my feet. And that's had a dramatic effect. Spreading the toes has definitely helped. And the other 8 or 9 things are in my book. And all I can say is, if I hadn't done those things, I probably would have lost my toes by now.
And coming up right here on the Heart of Innovation, we'll hear more of Kevin's inspiring story. So stay with us right here on the Heart of Innovation. Don't go away.
3 years ago, my symptoms started with leg pain.
Everyone's clear on that side.
Can you check the feedback, Colin?
Yes, I can. Give me a second.
I looked. I don't see anyone else unmuted.
doctor blamed my neuropathy on diabetes until I got a wound on my.
I was checking that too, Dr. Phillips, and that part looks okay.
Douglas,
Oh,
I
is that
love
Doug?
the.
Doug?
Is that
Hi,
a
Doug.
shotgun behind us there? What do we got there? What is that? Little 22?
12 gauge.
Ah, yeah, okay. For the rabbits.
The wild boars.
Oh, really?
I don't
Yeah,
hear the
I don't hear it either.
now. That's weird.
Is
It
this what
must have
you're
been
hoping
probably
for?
might have been on yours. What?
Is this what you're hoping I would talk about?
Yeah, and I want to get to because I want to get to the kind of the mental aspect of it.
Well, right.
Because that we
Yeah,
got
I
to
mean, I
get to
think.
that.
Sorry,
You know, the
Kim.
challenges that you face, right?
Well,
We already have one that wants to buy your PAD book. Yay! It's really
I
good. It's worth picking up.
I think
Just
we
to
need to
let
talk.
you know, Kim, I checked on the audio on my side. The feedback loop you guys were talking about isn't prevalent, at least in the audio here. So that's good news for that. But I will keep monitoring to make sure nothing else happens for it.
Okay, I appreciate you.
Thanks. I think it's important too to talk about the fact, Kevin, if I heard you correctly, you started at over the age of 50 doing these Ironmans, and so that's inspiring in and of itself, because I think there are a lot of folks out there that like, well, I've never exercised, so why start now? But you debunk that kind of myth really quickly. So that to me makes you pretty darn relatable to those folks that are listening. And if nothing else, will hopefully motivate them, myself included.
I mean, the first time I ran was in my early 50s, and I had one hell of a job learning how to run.
Yeah, I mean, like, it's
Knee
awesome.
surgery due to running poor running style. And in the end, I had to modify my running style. And then I went over to a low impact shuffle. And all my friends said, you can't run like that. And at 67, I ran the Boston Marathon. So you can run like that.
And you got pretty good form in this.
Yeah, that was when I finished the Lake Placid Ironman in 2011 with my stent graft. I think I'm the only person on the planet to finish a full Ironman with a
Sorry to
stent graft.
interrupt. 15 seconds till we air.
Call 800-329-2077, 800-329-2077, 800-329-2077, 800-329-2077.
860 AM, The Answer.
Welcome back to the Heart of Innovation. For more on today's topic, go to theheartofinnovation.org. That's theheartofinnovation.org. Once again, here's Emmy Award-winning journalist Kim McNicholas and interventional cardiologist Dr. John Phillips.
Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the show. We are talking to Kevin Morgan, and he has written 2 books, How to Train for Aging and How to Fight the Crippling Pain of Peripheral Artery Disease. He's 80 plus years old, and he is still competing as a world-class athlete despite his debilitating vascular diseases. And throughout the show, we are talking about how he's able to do it. But Kevin, I really want to get to that mindset that you have, that when you were diagnosed with both of these, and for most people, they can be crippling. With my mom with aortic disease, it was actually fatal. With so many people with peripheral artery disease, it is a disease that's more prevalent and deadlier than most cancers. And yet here you are, you're still competing at 80 plus years old as a world-class athlete. And you were, even before being diagnosed, you were working out, you were exercising regularly, something that they say is supposed to prevent these types of issues. How frustrated, what was going through your mind, in saying, hey, I have been working out, how in the world, should I be having these issues right now when I'm doing everything I'm supposed to do? That had to have crossed your mind, like, should I continue doing this stuff? Is it even worth continuing to exercise?
Well, when the AAA or the aortic aneurysm was really a result of a genetic weakness in my connective tissue. probably not directly related to the dyslipidemia or the blood fat problem. So that didn't worry me. Once I had a stent put in the aorta, I had to think about how to modify my training to stabilize the stent and not dislocate it. So I made some changes based on very logical thinking. I mean, I have a very Aspergery personality. And so I thought it through and modified my behavior to protect my stent. And I've managed to do that ever since. I mean, you don't have a bike wreck because that did dislocate it in 2013 and it was repaired in Cleveland. The biggest problem with the stent is it limits blood flow. It's non-elastic. So it reduces the amount of energy I can put into my legs. So it does slow me down on the bike, but it wasn't enough to prevent me from doing those races. So that was fine. PAD, peripheral arterial disease, is another thing altogether. It's a monster. It's really, really terribly difficult to deal with. You have to face pain, and you have to understand competitive cycling, which is part of my sport, is a lot about pain management. It's intensely painful sport, and you get to know the difference between good pain and bad pain. So I would say when it comes to mental toughness, you have to be mentally fairly tough to do Ironman anyway, but some days it's a bit overwhelming for me because it seems like this endless battle. And when I go out to run, which is the hardest of all, I have to work against the pain, get my collaterals open wide. And I know after about 3 to 4 miles, my collaterals will be wide open and a lot of that pain is gone. And then I'm starting to cruise again, something I never imagined was even possible 6 or 7 years ago. But a lot of that is due to modifying the way I move. That definitely helps. When it comes to mental toughness, yeah, it's tough. We all have different ways of motivating ourselves. For some of us, it's being alive so we see our grandchildren. For me, I love the sport and I enjoy life a great deal. And what I use as a motivator is I sign up for another race. If I sign up for a race, I have training to do, and it keeps me on track. It's very easy to say, well, this hurts too much. I'll just have a beer and chill out and read a book. Well, that's certain death. You move or you die. I think that's the deal. And but I'm fortunate that I love the sport. I just love the cross training. When I go to races, I meet friends at races. And the last 2 races I was in, I missed the cutoff slightly because of my PAD. And in Finland, in the World Half Ironman Championships, I came in 1 hour later than the cutoff time. I thought they'd pull my chip. Because they knew I was 80 years old and I had PAD, they kept the finish line open for me. And I would say I really managed to finish that run, which was very, very difficult and hairy run, because I wanted that finished photograph. I wanted that finished photograph for the very people you're talking to. They needed to know what you can do with almost completely blocked arteries below your knee. And you can do it by growing collaterals, exercising, making slight changes, spreading your toes. I mean, is that really such a big deal to wear yoga toes a few times a day? I mean, and learned the various things in my book, which you can actually get the ebook for free from my website, or you can buy it to support my work from Amazon. You make these changes and you can keep going, but you have to have determination. It's basically, I mean, I have a friend recently who broke her hip and she was starting to give up. She was in a lot of pain. And I said to her, it's move or die, Sheila. It's move or die. And I think it got her going, because basically that's true. And in the case of your patients and people who listen to the program, it's move or lose your toes, move or lose your feet, move or lose your legs, move or lose your life. And yet you don't have to. You don't have to do that. You have to know that you've just got to fight it. It's a battle. And boy, it is worth it. It's so worth the effort. It really is. But is it easy? No. Is it worth it? Yes.
Kevin, earlier in the show, you had mentioned that, I believe, if I heard you correctly, you started running when you were in your 50s, early 50s. So what were you do? Did you always exercise, and or what happened?
I always had a sport. When I was in my I was a teenager, I went to I was a small kid because of rickets, right? So I like to stand up for myself. So first it was I joined a judo class, then I got into water polo, hiking. I went through martial arts for 4 years in my late 40s. And then I watched my son in an Ironman race in my early 50s. And man, I got the bug. And I'd never been a runner ever. And so in order to finish an Ironman, you got to run a marathon at the end of the race, right? Is part of the race. I mean, the race is a 2.4 mile swim, 112-mile bike, and a full marathon. So to finish that marathon, you're going to know how to run. It took me 7 years to learn how to run, from my early 50s through my early 60s. And then with some really good coaching, I managed to run Boston. And that gave me the confidence to say to myself, when I felt I'm not a runner, well, I ran Boston, so I am a runner. And that helped a lot. But yeah, no, running, I started in my early 50s.
So what do you say to someone who's listening right now that may be sitting on the couch with their feet up, having a soda and potato chips, and in their mind they say, well, I've never exercised, I don't know what to start doing, I don't know what to do, I can't do it. What would you say to that person if you were sitting next to them?
Get off the couch, eat healthier food, and think about your loved ones and how you would like to be alive for your loved ones. And then start to educate yourself, and start just little and often. Learn how to move. You have to build body awareness. People don't really listen to their bodies enough. They put buds in their ears, and they need to listen to their bodies and see what's going on. And think back to when you were younger. What was it you were good at in terms of body movement? Like maybe you played, I don't know, baseball or basketball or something. All the things you learned back then are still inside you. It's what you call your base. So now you have to reclaim your base of what you had when you were younger. That doesn't mean go out and do what you did when you were young. You'll injure yourself. I strongly recommend, first step, go to a good PT and get an assessment, and they will tell you where your strengths and weaknesses are. For instance, I did that when I knew I was going to take on a full Ironman race. I knew I had to get a health assessment, see if I could do it. I went to a PT. It turned out I have very weak leg, adductors, the muscles that pull your legs in. So that was added to my exercise routine. I found coaches. Sometimes I couldn't afford a coach, so I go online and watch videos. So find what you love to do. You have to enjoy whatever it is you choose to do, but it has to give you both cardiovascular strength and somatic strength, muscle strength, and mental strength. And I would say the mental strength is 80% of the problem. That book I wrote on how to train for aging, the ultimate endurance sport, I allocated the first half of the book to trying to give people the mental strength they need to fight back against entropy or decay, which is what this is exactly what you're doing. You're fighting entropy by using the force of life itself. People forget that they're alive because of life force. Nobody really knows what that is, but they know what its effects are.
And coming up right here on the Heart of Innovation, we're going to find out exactly what it is and some of those tips and tricks to building that mental toughness that's in the first part of his book, How to Train for Aging. That's next right here on the Heart of Innovation. So stay with us.
For anyone living with everyday aches and pains, there are a lot of things.
Everyone's clear. We have 1-2 minutes before we're back on.
And that's
Do you want to
why
bring
you're
us back? Do you want to bring us back on this one? And then also during it, I wanted to see, where did Thomas go? Thomas is being inspired, so I thought it might be fun to bring in a member of our live studio audience that at some point that is already out there. I think he's on either walking on a treadmill or he's just walking in place. So might be fun to, if Thomas is game for that, we might just bring him in to get his thoughts on what he's hearing so far and his inspiration that he's getting from Kevin.
Love it. Yeah, I'll bring it back because I'd like to spend a little bit of time, Kevin. In your book, you talked about the entropy and the syntropy, and I think that's pretty fascinating. So I'd like to dive into that a little bit.
Sure, I've never done anything like this. By the way, a radio show, totally new.
Isn't this fun? Isn't this fun?
Yeah, I mean, Kim just runs it, and she just basically cuts us off, and that's when we stop.
Yeah, everyone needs a boss, I guess.
I have to feel powerful once in a while.
Yeah, no, I really
Or
admire what you
adventure
do.
once in a while.
I don't know how you keep doing it, but you do.
It's a
Well, I
lot.
just
We're fighting for someone this morning. So,
Hey
along with
everyone,
fighting the
30 seconds till
pigeons
we air.
from destroying our yard.
Truckloads of food would be distributed. In the meantime, a key member of the U.S. National Security Team
Hi,
meeting over
Marlene.
the weekend with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Former President Donald Trump slated to address thousands of the NRA.
All right, 10 seconds, then we're live.
Later, Mr. Trump pledging to continue to defend the Second Amendment. This is SRN News.
8:60 a.m. The Answer.
Welcome back to the Heart of Innovation. For more on today's topic, go to theheartofinnovation.org. That's theheartofinnovation.org. Once again, here's Emmy Award-winning journalist Kim McNicholas and interventional cardiologist Dr. John Phillips.
welcome back, everybody. Thank you for joining us. It's a great day to be alive. We're having a fantastic conversation with Kevin Morgan, veterinarian scientist, and I believe 6-time Ironman finisher. And so before we went to break, Kevin, you had mentioned, and you've mentioned this in your book, the topics of entropy and syntropy. And I am reading a quote from your book. You say, entropy and syntropy exist in a state of balance, with entropy working to kill life and life playing to defy entropy. You are life. You kick entropy in the butt using syntropy. Explain that to us, please.
Yes, the concept of syntropy I liked as a metaphor for life, and nobody knows what life force really is, but we do know the effects of it. How are all these apparently unalive molecules that we're made of able to create what is life itself, and our emotions and our feelings, and the way we fight back against the heat death predicted by physicists, because entropy within a system always increases, and so energy is lost as heat. And the physicists would have you think we're all doomed and that's the end of it. And then I came across the concept of syntropy, which is basically based upon the full energy equation. Not there's E equals mc squared, but it turns out that's not the complete equation, which I think I put in the book. And if you correct for the square root of the complete function, you end up with a theoretical negative time, which means time traveling backwards in time. Backwards movement of time has also been predicted by Feynman diagrams in particle physics. Quantum mechanics and chaos theory tell us that we don't really understand anything about the universe really. We kind of understand it, and we have metaphors we use. And so I got very interested in a couple of books on syntropy, which seemed to be a pretty good metaphor for life force. So I felt if my readers realize that inside of them is a will to live, a will to fight back, there's also this tendency to give up because of the inevitable entropy that tears us down and will eventually cause us to die. Well, life fights against that. And I like the syntropy concept, and it's worth reading those books. It goes counter to what many physicists think, but I'm not that impressed by certain physicists. That's a whole nother story.
I also think, Kevin, it's because they haven't experienced what you've experienced. So a lot of times you can have all of the theories in the world and look at the numbers and things like that, but until you actually experience it and live it, I think that that's a whole other level, don't you think?
Yes, exactly. I know I'm fighting against entropy and my body's slowly decaying, but I'll be damned if I'll give up. And so I see I have this life force inside of me that I wanted to get people to understand. Everyone, even the guy sitting on the couch drinking a beer and eating chips, he has that life force inside of him. He needs to grab it and use it and fight back. And that's really what I was trying to get across.
And what's interesting is that as we have a live studio audience, I think that those have joined us quite a number of times on the radio know that we do have a live studio audience. And I've been watching Thomas, who is in the UK, and he and I have had conversations of late. I wanted to see if Thomas could jump in because, he's been struggling over there in getting care. And just as we were talking and halfway through this broadcast and through your inspiring words, He was just showing us that he has actually gotten up and he is either walking in place, Thomas, or you're on a treadmill. I couldn't quite tell because you have a background up.
I'm walking in place. I'm looking at treadmills online, and I think they might be within my price range. So I think I'm going to invest in a treadmill, because where I live in the UK, it rains 70% of the year. So going out is a bit of a challenge sometimes.
Where do you live in
What do
the
you
UK?
think of?
I live on the southeast coast in Kent.
Yeah, I'm from Bristol, but I've been in the States a long time.
It sounds like you've been there a long time.
Right.
Yeah.
So, Thomas, any questions for Kevin or anything that you want to say in response to some of his inspiring words that you've heard so far during this broadcast?
I'm not great for coming up with questions on the spot, but you're in luck. Kevin was talking about spreading toes and having wide toe boxes in shoes. And I wondered if he was referring to these toe separators.
Yeah, yoga shows I use, but there are various forms. Yeah, that's what I my toes wide.
I purchased these having seen your last broadcast where you were talking about walking with your toes, which I've been trying to do, but because my diagnosis is, well, it's fairly recent. It's just in the last couple of months. So the truth is I'm still coming to terms with it. And so when I put the toe separators on, I've put them on for a while, but I'm kind of afraid to leave them on because, well, I because I'm new to it, and it came as such a shock to me that, and how, I mean, I've had claudication, I now realize, in my right calf for a couple of years, never able to explain why it was so painful to walk after a while. But when I realized I had a serious problem was when I would wake up in the middle of the night and suddenly I wouldn't be able to feel my right leg. I'd be able to feel it with my hands, but my leg itself could feel nothing. And the further you go down the leg, the more numb it came. I couldn't feel my foot, couldn't feel my toes. So that happened once, and I turned out of bed, and as typical, the inline flow returned, so everything was normal, and I had no idea what that was about. I didn't associate the cramps that I was getting when walking with not being able to feel my leg and feet or toes at night. Kim was talking about how I've had difficulty accessing care in the UK. When I did go to my primary care practitioners, I didn't actually get to see a doctor, more a doctor's assistant, who took my symptoms to the doctor, and then I was sent back a leaflet. So with some bitterness, I say that I was diagnosed remotely, and I was given a leaflet. And I've never heard of. Sorry,
Thomas.
It's the Kevin show.
No. This is the beauty of having a live show, because you touched on two things that I think are really important, and this is why it's so important that we do whatever we can to support the work that Kim does, meaning educate and raise awareness. Because if you had chest pain, you would know that that's a heart attack, potentially a heart attack, and that's life-threatening, and you need to do something. The problem with peripheral arterial disease is patients don't know enough about it. We don't do enough education, and you don't necessarily know what you're feeling or your symptoms and what's that from, and could it be life-threatening? Now, people with peripheral arterial disease, you don't die from peripheral arterial disease, you die from the blockages elsewhere, and that's why we have to be very aggressive in reducing risk and things of that nature. But we have to create that link. There's a gap between the symptoms and the knowledge, and whatever. And Kim and her work does just that to try to bridge that gap. That's really important. And number two, your diagnosis. I didn't mean to cut you off, but I've heard this story before. A lot of times, physicians, clinicians, through no fault of their own, misdiagnose patients with PAD for something musculoskeletal or nerve or things of that nature. And it's just so important to continue to do this work. And again, I just applaud. I'm gushing a little bit here, but I applaud Kim for what she does and the fact that she's able to connect with you. And it's just amazing.
And I absolutely love that, Kevin and I have talked quite a bit, and he's wondering, well, the books aren't flying off the shelves. I don't understand why. I want to get the word out there, not to make money, but literally because the information has helped him, and he's sharing his heart. He's sharing what's worked for him for other people, and he wants to see other people thrive as he has. And coming up right here on the Heart of Innovation, I want to hear his reaction to Thomas saying, hey, you know what? You had an impact on me. Look at this. I bought those toe separators and I'm ready to go. I want to hear more. So stay with us for more from Kevin right here on the Heart of Innovation. Don't go away.
This is Dennis Prager. Now you
Neener, Kevin. I have a surprise
we have
for
1 minute till we come
you.
back for the last section. As soon as you hear the music, you got about 20 seconds to get out.
Okay, to start hearing the music, we gotta cut and give your website. Okay, Kevin, when you start hearing the music, start, kind of wrap in a couple sentences and give your website if people want to learn more.
When do I do that?
When you start
Right
hearing the
back
music.
when we come in. Oh, she's got it.
So when we'll start, we have 4 minutes literally to close the show and get some final perspectives. And then you'll start hearing music come in. And if you're talking, just start wrapping up, and we need to give your websites so people can visit to learn more and to find your books.
All
But
right,
John,
everyone.
do you want to take us
5
back
seconds,
in and
then
get
we're
the
on live.
reaction? And get Kevin's reaction to what Thomas had to say and maybe some inspiring words.
This is 860 AM. The Answer.
Welcome back to the Heart of Innovation. For more on today's topic, go to theheartofinnovation.org. That's theheartofinnovation.org. Once again, here's Emmy Award-winning journalist Kim McNicholas and interventional cardiologist Dr. John Phillips.
Welcome back, everybody, and thank you for joining us. Time clearly flies when you're having fun. Kevin, before you respond to how you motivated Thomas, I'm going to use a quote that you took from Bruce Lee in your book. Are you going to let the obstacles in your life be stumbling blocks or stepping stones? So Thomas was just diagnosed with a potential stumbling block, but after hearing about your story, now he's going to use it as a stepping stone. What do you think about that?
Yeah, well, Thomas is lucky he knows what he has. I mean, this is the bottom line. It sounds like he certainly has PAD. It'd be ideal if he could get an ABI, ankle brachial index test done to be sure, if he can get that done, but his symptoms certainly are consistent with PAD. His real goal now should be to grow those collaterals because, as I said, my right foot is running almost entirely on collaterals. When it comes to my books, you can buy them on Amazon and elsewhere. However, if you go to my website, inspirationalselfhelpbooks.com, and scroll down to on the page Keep Your Feet, you'll find you can download ebooks for free, but the paperbacks I can't afford to print and mail. And so that's available. But the beauty of it is, Thomas, you know what you have and you're taking it on. And there's about 10 or 12 different approaches that I incorporate in that book, all of which can be done without any guidance from a physician. I mean, running with your whole body, you can learn from a book, moving, which you can apply to walking, etc. So the beauty of it is, if you educate yourself, you can do really well. I've been at this over 8 years now. I've still got my toes. I was third in the World Half Ironman Championships in Finland in the fall of 23, even with really severe PAD and my right foot running on collaterals. So was it easy? No. But then I was third in the World Half Ironman Championship, showing what can be done. So I would say, Thomas, you are very lucky to know what you're dealing with. And I think it's great that you're taking it on.
How scary is it, though, to be as active as you are and to know that if you do slow down, that these vascular diseases may overtake you. I mean, anything can happen, injuries. My dad ended up, he was 4 miles a day and then he broke his hip. And then it seemed like this um, domino effect of just one thing after another. He's in the wheelchair, then his back is having problems, then he has heavy legs, and then he ends up with blood clots, and he's really lost his motivation. And so it is something that has to go through your mind. How do you overcome that?
Well,
30
be honest,
seconds.
my attitude is fear is a waste of time. It's fear is useful to get you moving and get you going, but there's always a way you can go. There's always something you can do. And I have inspiration in the forms, for instance, Jean-Dominique Bauby's book, The Butterfly in the Diving Bell. If I feel down, I look at what he overcame, far more difficult than what I'm dealing with. So look for inspiration, look for heroes.
Thank you so much. Kevin, we appreciate you so much. If you want to check out his books, of course, go to his website. You can also pick up his books, How to Train for Aging and How to Fight the Crippling Pain, Peripheral Artery Disease, on Amazon. Hope you were inspired as much as I have been and John has been with Kevin and his story. I hope you have a great weekend, everyone, and tune in every weekend right here on the Heart of Innovation.
Thanks, Kim.
And I wanted to, since we're still live on YouTube, Kevin, do you have a few more moments to answer a few questions? I know Douglas has a question. Thomas might want to jump in again and ask you a few questions. This will give you a chance to share more about your book and some of the tips from your book if you'd like. I didn't know if John has anything, any further questions for you as well that we can continue into our Patients Tell All. This is our Patients Tell All aspect of the Global PAD Association and our Heart of Innovation broadcast. So this is a chance for everyone in our studio audience to jump in and have a conversation. And Kevin Morgan, who wrote the books, How to Train for Aging and How to Fight the Crippling Pain of Peripheral Artery Disease, both books on Amazon. Also, Kevin, they're available. What's your website? InspirationalSelfHealthBooks.com.
Yes. And if you can't get them, let me know. You can write to me if you want. You can email. Also, I have a newsletter you can sign up for on my site and ask questions directly. My email address is olddogintraining@gmail.com. And clearly, I'm the old dog.
I love it. I love it. So before we jump into patient questions, Tom or Kevin, I have a question because I don't know that, and you referenced this as well. I don't know that anyone's ever asked me if they could run a marathon, let alone do an Ironman with a AAA stent graft in, because I'm intimately familiar with those. Were there any precautions that your surgeon had recommended or said just, go? I'm assuming they wanted you to heal up a little bit, right?
Well, I mean, I have veterinary training, medical training. I'm a researcher, that helped. But no, I got no useful advice from surgeons or physicians, and I understand why. To me, it's like when I go to the garage and get my car fixed, I don't ask the mechanic to tell me how to drive. And I've got this body and it's got a stent graft, and it was up to me to work out how to drive it. First thing I did was create a blog and go out into the world to try and find other people who were doing full Ironman races with a AAA stent graft. I found no one. Therefore, being a scientist who likes to solve problems, I just thought through the mechanics and realized I needed to reduce hip flexion. I needed to keep training. I knew my times would be slower, but I don't mind as long as I'm at the start feeling good and I can finish the race. I'm quite happy. So no, I could get no useful advice from physicians or surgeons, because I don't think they're in a position to do that, because they have so few patients like me. Most of their patients come in and they have other health problems that prevent them from doing this, or they've never exercised and have no awareness of it. I do get frustrated with lack of interest on the part of surgeons, especially endovascular surgeons and other physicians in our kind of work. But I also know they're busy, they're under pressure from HMOs and stuff like that. But if you meet somebody who's done a full Ironman with a AAA stent graft, I'd sure like to know who they are so we can compare notes.
I'll be on the lookout.
Yeah, I'm curious, Dr. John, what it's like. I mean, obviously you seem very, very shocked. I mean, is it inspiring? I mean, wouldn't you love to see more patients like him coming in, and how inspiring is Kevin, and his story to you? And how do you think now going in Monday and dealing with your patients, will it change at all your mindset in dealing with him? And are you planning to share your story with some of his story with some of your patients to help inspire them and show them what's possible?
Yeah, I think it makes it more relatable if I share a story of an actual patient as opposed to me saying you need to exercise. Like yesterday, I had office hours and I kept telling people you have to exercise. Most of the people I was seeing had heart attacks, but regardless, you have to exercise. And everybody, I mean, we all have excuses, but for me to now say, hey, listen, we just interviewed a gentleman who's going to be 81, who in this, started running marathons in his 50s, had a stent graft at 60 something, ran. I mean, the stent graft itself, those after a while, they're locked in place, and they're very flexible. He's probably not going to damage it. But yeah, hip flexion can maybe create some torque, but be that as it may, it's just inspirational to patients, I hope, because again, I think sometimes they hear what I say, but it's the horse to water theory. So maybe this will help.
John, I did dislocate the left arm of my stent graft. It popped right out of the common iliac back into the aneurysm. It was spotted on Doppler in a routine checkup. And then I had to go to Cleveland for them to fix that. And they fixed it by hooking the left arm of the iliac branch, common iliac branch, back down into the common iliac. They inserted another stent graft within it via the femoral artery, and it was fenestrated. And they then connected that up to a stent in my hypogastric or internal iliac artery via the brachial artery and back down the aorta. So they did some really amazing work. That surgeon was done by Tara Mastracci in Cleveland. And I actually interviewed her, and there's a short interview of her by me on my YouTube channel, the Fit Old Dog YouTube channel.
Very good.
So twice I had problems with the stent. I mean, a graft, open surgery in a graft, even though it comes with more risks, is a better repair. Is absolutely a better repair than a stent. Twice my stent has failed.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, the durability is much better. However, the upfront cost is a lot less for the stent graft. But
yeah, and if you've got other health problems, it's probably safer because it's almost outpatient surgery, whereas open comes with serious risks.
Indeed. All right, now let's get to some patients. Douglas, I know you had something.
And I think Douglas walked away for a second. Thomas, did you want to jump back in?
Yeah, just to say I have had an ankle brachial pressure index, Kevin, and so I have 30% flow to my right leg, which is the most affected. I had a contrast CT scan carried out last Sunday, but I haven't had any feedback or results from that. And what I started to say and it didn't quite finish was that when I think being diagnosed remotely, as in I didn't even get to see the doctor, I was given a leaflet and told you've got that. And so then, well, in some ways, I guess it was a blessing because I had to go looking for my own information. The leaflet was very basic and it felt somehow random. It gave something like out of 20 people, 4 will experience improvement, 4 will not worsen, 4 will worsen, and I think 1 in 20 result in amputation. And I freaked, and I'm still struggling with that. But then waking up at night with my leg being numb, I was just terrified that I was going to look down and my toes were going to be black, and that was going to be the last time I woke up with 2 feet. And so I didn't know where it was going after a couple of months. And watching a lot of the Way to My Heart videos. I've calmed down a lot, and yes, I've told Kim more than once she's an angel.
So, Thomas, how old are you?
I will be 58 in July.
Oh, you're the same age as my eldest son. Yeah, no, you can fix this problem absolutely with training and exercise. You got to find something you like to do. What I've discovered is if I push and I manage to run, and I obviously see it's really difficult for me to run, it removes any pain at all I have while I walk. You've got to push the envelope, and what that does, it makes other things easier. So now you're young, you've got, if you're getting yourself in reasonably good shape, it's extremely important to do cross training for cardiovascular fitness. I mean, I do Ironman. You're about the age I was when I first did my first full Ironman race. And I trained for that for about 8 or 9 years before I was able to do that. You are not a statistic. I don't care about their statistics. They're not based on you. They're based on a whole random assortment of people, many of whom are horribly unfit. Have you ever smoked?
Yes, I'm a very bad patient. I've done everything.
Okay, well, get rid of this. Don't smoke. It's
I,
okay.
I've said this to Kim, and I think it's an important thing, and I'm going to keep saying it. Dr. Anita Dua, it was watching. I think it's an old. I've gone back through the catalogue, and watching that. Which was just a couple of days after my diagnosis, and I had my last tobacco before that. I have not smoked since watching that video. Amazing, and I've told the vascular team everything about how
you can repair most of the damage. I mean, the body is very adaptive, and so I think you've got a great life ahead of you. Fear is a total waste of time. It just stresses and causes damage. Once you get into an exercise program you enjoy, it doesn't matter what it is as long as you enjoy it. It involves some cardiovascular and some strength training. And then if you go through that book of mine, I list about 13 different things that are important, like balance and posture and things like that. And get that going. You'll have a balanced life. It doesn't mean you can't have a beer from time to time. It's just you can't have one every day. It's a lifestyle. It's a lifestyle, and you can do great. I'm sure of it.
Thank you.
And I want to bring in Douglas. Douglas. And Thomas, you can jump in anytime. You don't have to wait for us to do it. This is a conversation time for all of us. Douglas, go ahead.
Yes, Kevin, you and I talked the other day, and it's been a struggle, you getting this information out there to doctors, because I think it was addressed that yours is real world experience compared to book knowledge and what it used to be like. You actually have shown that these things can be done by real world experience. But how hard, what type of struggle have you run into trying to get doctors to understand and to say, oh, that will work, that will work, that will work? Because we're used to saying, I'm diagnosed with this and I can't.
Well, when I first addressed the issue of training with my aortic problems, what I got from surgeons was cardiovascular surgeons writing to me and saying I had no right to give people advice on this. And so they were kind of pretty rude to me. This is a while ago. And I replied that nobody's giving suitable advice. And also, I'm a fellow of the Royal College of Pathologists in London, so I have respectable medical training. And then that quietened them, that shut them up. But none of them have ever communicated with me ever in the last 13 years about my work on training with AAA. When it comes to PAD, what I get is silence. I saw my own surgeon only a few weeks ago, and he had no interest. And Sue was with me, who's a nurse, my partner, and she was kind of surprised. She tried to get him interested in what I was doing, and they're just not interested. They don't. It's like I'm talking Chinese or something. It's really strange because I think they live in a land of surgery and pills, and they feel. I think they get frustrated with trying to get their patients to work out, and they don't. So in a way, I think it's almost not part of their business model. It's just they might pay lip service, but we have a marketing problem. This is a marketing problem. How to get this across to the physicians. I was extremely surprised in health when the article about our work in Health Monitor came out. It had no impact whatsoever in people, physicians especially, communicating with me about my work. And yeah, I have medical training. I do not understand why there's this deathly silence.
I'll provide a little
And
color
before
there if
you do,
possible.
I
Okay.
want to just add on to that, just because I would love to hear, John, your overall perspective, also considering, my experience as well, because I was just at a conference and I have a free or no cost walking program to give to doctors. They tell patients to walk, walk, walk. They complain about not patients not being able to access or not having access to a regimented or supervised exercise program. The AHA and all of the societies just came out jointly with new guidelines that emphasize the supervised exercise program, but at the very least, a structured program. They all seemed interested, but when push comes to shove, only one or two of them actually followed up. Not one of them ordered the walking brochures that explain to patients and give them the extra details patients desire to be able to learn how to walk effectively. And we even gave Kevin's book away at a conference in Chicago last year. Still no follow-up. So I really want to understand, and I think Kevin does as well, and not like you're going to solve, the global issue here, but you might have some perspective as to where maybe all of us are going wrong, and maybe some advice on how we can infiltrate
Can I make a
and create
comment
the
on this?
action we want to see.
Let me make a comment on this. I think this is an important problem and it's a big problem. Can I speak for a minute?
Sure.
Okay, I worked in the pharmaceutical industry for 16 years. And during that time, I tried to sell the idea that the pharmaceutical industry needed a Bell Labs approach to the big problem of integrating pills and surgery with lifestyle. And the big problem is if you influence the patient's lifestyle, it doesn't help your business. You don't get any money for that. If you get money for pills and you get money for surgery. So I think this is very much a business problem. I felt they needed a Bell Labs approach to solving this deep problem within the American medical system. Somehow, how do you create a healthy business model that incorporates pills, surgery, and lifestyle? So lifestyle doesn't just become empty words. It's a seriously difficult marketing and business problem.
Yeah, I'll add my 2 cents. So if you look at it from kind of like I guess a teleological framework, the peripheral arterial disease is an illness, a phenomenon where you go to, depending on who you see, you're going to probably get 2 or 3 different treatment options. And of those, it's typically, now we're getting better, but I think typically it is an intervention type mentality. Kind of you're going to a barber, you're going to get a haircut. And it takes, and this is just me talking, okay? So this is me. My assumption is that it's harder to talk to a patient about changing their lifestyle, eating better, doing X, Y, and Z than to say, you know what, you need a procedure, sign here, and let's go. That is probably where a lot of this inertia comes from. And the radio silence, no pun intended or pun intended, that you hear, Kim, and you hear as well, Kevin.
Well, it's to me a very interesting social problem, a very important business problem. And I felt like a Bell Labs approach would be the way to go. And I could never get beyond their interest in corporate profits. And I understand you've got to run a business, you have to make a profit. And I don't know how to solve that problem, but it definitely needs solving. But I guess it starts when these people are children and they're told how to stay fit and exercise. Maybe it starts in high school when high school exercise is all about winning, which is a huge mistake. It's a terrible mistake. So maybe this is a deep societal philosophical problem we're trying to tackle.
But you have a couple of folks that have made some comments actually on Facebook on the Way to My Heart's Facebook page. You have Kathy who says, Kevin, you are an inspiration and your book is great. And she's going to be trying out those yoga toes. Also, Tammy is mentioning, she says, this man is an inspiration. I will be buying his book. My next battle is to grow blood vessels below my knees so I can do what I want to do. He has truly motivated me. So you are definitely having an impact, you know, right now, just being here with us.
If I can make a plug for getting reviews on my book, I mean, I have one written review, which is Kim's. I have 7 reviews. One person went on there and said basically my book was rubbish and just left a 1 star. But if we can get more reviews, you know, saying how the book was helpful or not helpful, just honest reviews, that really helps. But people, I don't think, realize that.
I have one more question, Kevin.
Sure.
Okay, Doug.
So on a typical day, can you describe your training methods on a typical day?
Well, when you're training for these races, Doug, there is no typical day. There's a program. Basically, once I'm in full training, and I'm easing back in now because I've started a new relationship and I fell in love and all that stuff at 80. That's not bad. Anyway, but that's another story. It comes down to basically a 3-week cycle, a hard week of training, a harder week of training, and then an easy week. I train 6 days a week when I'm in steady training. I have 1 day off a week. I've been doing this training under a number of coaches for years. Now I pretty well know how to do it. But my training is a mixture, a steady mixture and an organized mixture of swimming, biking, running, and then workouts at the gym. I do most of my strength training in the winter. And once I'm in steady training, and I'm starting to get there again now, having, you know, had a pretty busy personal life, I train twice a day. Great believer in lots of short workouts, lots of small workouts a day. I like to do 2. And I'm constantly watching for risk of injury. If I sense any strains, then I will back off. And I slowly build my bike distances up to 100 miles, my runs up to, depending on distance, 10, 15 miles. And, you know, and the swims, once I'm in steady swimming training, I do 3 5,000-yard swims a week, which is not a huge load for a swimmer, but it gets me out of the water in front of my age group. And so, yeah, 2 often short workouts a week, slowly building and then making sure I rest. So there is no typical day. I'm affected by the weather. I mean, if it's raining, I tend not to bike so much because it's more dangerous because, you know, these slick racing tires on the bike. But it's a matter of keeping the race in mind and trying to get myself to the race start. And I've signed up for a race in November now, which is another half Ironman race, getting myself to the start line on the beach with no injuries. That's the goal. So, yeah, it's a slow build.
Can you describe your diet? Is there a specific type of diet that you perform or that you do? You watch for certain things more than others?
Hey, real quick, I've got to run, everybody. Great show. Thank you. Kim, we'll see you later. Bye, everybody. Cheers.
Hey, John. Thanks again.
Thank you so much. Thanks, Thomas.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Douglas.
Yeah, I mean, about 9 years ago, I went over to a complete vegan diet. I was very strict. Where you have to remember, we're all biochemically different. It's really important to listen to your body when you eat. I mean, you might be fine with, I don't know, cabbages, and another person that makes them ill. So you got to listen to your body. But after 3 years of a strict vegan diet, there's no meat, no dairy, no eggs, I started developing nosebleeds on my right nostril. ENT couldn't fix it. And that lasted for 2 or 3 months. It was really awkward. Suddenly your blood starts flooding out your nose. I was missing some nutritional thing. So I started eating a few eggs a week and it went away. It was gone. And so that, once again, I had to listen to my body. My body was telling me I was missing some micronutrient affecting clotting. And so I fixed that. Now I eat mainly vegetables, but I do have some cheese because I'm English and I miss cheese, especially cheddar cheese. I drink wine and beer sometimes, but once I get in training, I have to cut that out because it messes with my training. I like to cook. I love to cook. So I get my vegetables whenever I can from the farmer's market or, a healthy food store. The quality of your diet is very dependent on the quality of the ingredients. You might find that you'll feel really good on rice. I prefer potatoes, which isn't surprising. And so mainly vegetables, to which I add some fish. I found salmon help with my blood lipids. So if I have fish at all, it's usually salmon. Every now and then I fancy cod and chips because I'm English, and so I will cook that. I'm a great believer in everything in moderation, including moderation. You have to party now and then. But I would say predominantly vegetables that I cook myself, and I listen to my body. If there's something that I know I disagree with and my body doesn't like, I don't eat it. I like to have a good mixture of greens, potatoes. I include beans because I don't eat meat. The only meat I eat is fish. And I guess you could say eggs are in a way like meat. I have my own chickens who aren't laying so well lately, so I get the eggs from the farmer's market, and I know they're good quality eggs. So basically, quality of ingredients, cooking the food yourself so you know what you're eating, and listen to your body, really. And as my training ramps up, I have to increase the amount of carbs and fats that I eat for energy. And so for a while, I went on a complete paleo diet, totally, largely fat and meat and stuff like that. I wrote about that. I managed to almost complete an Ironman without eating almost anything during the race because I went ketotic. The thing is about diet is to fully understand diet, you need to have some understanding of biochemistry, which can be a pain in the ass for some people to read. I mean, I read it for fun. But yeah, good ingredients and listen to your body. I think those for me are the two key things when it comes to diet. And eat what you like. I don't mean eat junk because you like junk. That's just bad training. Did that answer your question, Doug?
Absolutely. Can you go back to the toe thing and discuss the toe thing a little more for those that may not know?
Yeah, because
Okay,
we're getting questions as well. Douglas, thank you for bringing that up. We're getting some questions online from people who want to know when, how many times a day. And I do want to remind people, and especially we did have a disclaimer in the beginning of the show at the end of the regular show, but I also want to remind that before you start any exercise program, make sure you do check with your healthcare professionals to ensure that it's right for you. Every person presents differently with PAD. And so we have our little disclaimer that says, just make sure any information or advice here, do check with your healthcare team before acting on anything. And then with that being said, Kevin, you have the floor.
Okay, the reason to spread your toes is to spread your metatarsals, the long bones in your feet, because there are blood vessels that lie between those bones, and you don't want to compress them. When your feet hurt, there's a tendency to squeeze them tight together because it hurts. That is exactly the wrong thing to do. That decreases flow through your feet. If you go to my YouTube channel, Fit Old Dog YouTube channel, and you go to popularity, the very top video shows you how to use yoga toes. And it's a video by Rebecca Amos Lawson, who co-authored one of my other books. And she is a body movement expert, and she describes how to use yoga toes. And they're just designed to spread your toes and counteract that tendency for tube socks and small toe boxes to narrow your feet, which really reduces flow through your feet, which of course will inhibit blood to your feet and away from your feet. So a big toe box, spread your toes to spread your metatarsals and use the muscles in your feet. You will find with work, it doesn't happen overnight, you can quite dramatically improve oxygenation of your toes, and you've got a fair chance of keeping them. That you can check with an O2 SATS meter on your toes, and that's mentioned in one of my books. Did that answer the question?
Yep. And we also got a question about LDLs in the book. There's, she's known as Kim on there. And she is wondering about the significance of the LDL because she doesn't see, the nutrition discussed. She follows the Estelin diet, is very happy with the Estelin diet, but it's interesting. And the struggle that I had when we were trying to change my dad's diet and figure out the direction to go for his nutritional program when he was diagnosed with heart disease was exactly what she is saying, that when you look at the Esselin books or Dean Ornish books, a lot of it's really tough to understand, and for just the layperson. And also it doesn't explain the mechanism of action in a way that the layperson will understand. And the best explanation I ever had on the LDLs was from my dad's dietitian, who was going for her PhD. And she looked at things a little bit differently, kind of like you do, Kevin, just in very simple, logical ways. And she said, the reason that 40% of people who suffer a heart attack have normal cholesterol in the basic lipid panel is because the doctors are not digging a little bit deeper. They'll say, hey, your cholesterol is normal and you're fine. And it's really not the case. There are different levels, right? There are different types of LDL particles, the so-called bad cholesterol. You have the large fluffy ones, which are great. You can have a lot of those. You can even have high cholesterol. And if you have more of the large fluffy ones, you're not as likely to get into trouble with those. But it's when you have that imbalance, you have more of those small, dense LDL particles that when they become oxygenated by the trans fats and free radicals, they could eke into damaged areas of your arteries and push that wall up and out and block the blood flow in your arteries. And so it's always important, I say, to get the advanced lipid panel to understand your particle number and understand the quality of your LDL particles and your cholesterol versus just the quantity. But from your perspective, Kevin, because I know you've done a lot of research on this as well, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, my problem was an LDL, low density lipoprotein problem. It was not a cholesterol problem. It was very, very severe. And I would say the most important thing to focus on is your HDL, because HDLs, high density lipoproteins, are involved in retrograde transport of cholesterol particles out of your tissues. And so a high HDL is a good thing. And the only thing that helped my HDL go from under 20 to up to 80 milligrams per deciliter was exercise. And Ironman completely literally fixed my lipid profile. And so, but it's a lot of exercise. And most people I remember one person wrote to me and said she'd rather lose her feet than do an Ironman. And I'm like, well, I guess that's your choice. All I know is that within a year of full Ironman training, which is a lot of exercise, my my triglycerides were down below 150 and my HDLs were up at 80, which completely reversed. My plasma was completely clear when you spun it down for hematocrit. So get to know your fats. Fat biochemistry is highly complex. It really is complicated. I don't claim to know it very well because I haven't been researching it lately. And all I can say is diet helped a bit. Statins didn't help one little bit, and they were totally inappropriate. And exercise completely reversed my problem. That's my main experience as, an experiment with an N of 1.
And my dad also they did some advanced testing through Boston Heart Diagnostics, because as you mentioned, not everyone is created equal when it comes to the presentation of vascular diseases. And you really have to understand your presentation of disease and push your doctor to get to the heart of it, to really get to the bottom of what are your risk factors, what are the factors leading to your situation. It's very easy for them to look at the textbook and say, for every single patient, standard protocols, even the new guidelines from the AHA and other societies that just came out on the 14th of this month, said that standard treatment includes statins for every single patient. And for my dad, though, with heart disease, it wasn't appropriate, according to ultimately his cardiologist that looked at the Boston Heart Diagnostics, the advanced blood work that we got through them, which is covered through most Medicare. You just have to find a doctor. You have to go to their website, Boston Heart Diagnostics, and ask them to find a doctor near you that is to date on their diagnostics and can order it from their particular practice. But my dad found out that he didn't have a liver production problem, which is what the statins actually tackle. He had a cholesterol reabsorption issue. So as you said, Kevin, those HDLs are the export, right? They're the transportation for the LDLs to get them out of your body. And how do you get them out of your body?
You got to get your HDL up.
You got to get those HDLs, right? You got to get those up, get more transporters to get them out. But also, you have to, once they do drop off the packages, you got to push them out of the body, right? And my dad ended up having a cholesterol reabsorption problem because once the HDLs were dropping off the packages, they weren't getting excreted. And he basically was not having enough bowel movements. And so his dietitian had said, listen, men on an average day should have a bowel movement 2 to 3 times, especially if you do have this issue with the cholesterol, particularly those small, dense LDL particles. And as soon as we worked on that with a functional medicine practitioner in partnership with his dietitian and partnership with his cardiologist, it was great because when you find open-minded doctors, they'll all work together. And it's fantastic how they work together to get them on the right probiotics, prebiotics, the right soluble fiber levels, et cetera, et cetera. His cholesterol went right back down. Everything, all of his lipid panels ended up normal. Even the advanced lipid panels, they looked even better than mine. And I haven't been diagnosed with anything except I've joined your group, Kevin, because I was found to have a thoracic aneurysm. I haven't been checked for abdominal yet. I need to do that. But
what size is your TA?
3.7. It's in the aortic root. But they said for my frame, my size, most doctors would have brushed it off, but they're concerned. They're now sending me for advanced testing, connective tissue testing with at the university nearby, UC San Francisco, because they're concerned since my mom just passed from an aneurysm that was undiagnosed despite symptoms. I get so tired of people saying it doesn't have symptoms. I'm sorry, there are some symptoms. And especially when she went to 4 doctors in a matter of 2 weeks and they all brushed it off with clear symptoms by that point. It was like, hello, what's going on? And then finally her body just couldn't take it. But, you know, it's my brother has a bicuspid valve defect and also 3 aneurysms, I think now. I think he has a couple of the valves and one in his aortic root. And so they're wondering if there's something more genetic in our case, as in your case, that is making our connective tissues a little weaker. So we're going to explore that.
There's one thing about drugs I like to mention. Statins are muscle toxins. I've seen the lesions. They induce basically rhabdomyolysis, which will counter any attempt to use exercise to fix your lipid problem. Number 2, beta blockers, which in my opinion are overprescribed, will also prevent you from exercising and get your heart rate up. Those 2 drugs have to be used totally appropriately, and they are horribly prescribed. So if you're recommended a beta blocker or a statin, I suggest you think carefully about it if you want to use exercise to fix your dyslipidemia.
But you have to also be honest with yourself and the reality of what you're willing to do. And you have to put in a lot of effort, a lot of energy. You got to take your health into your own hands. You have one life to live, right? And you have to decide that you really want to live it and that you can live it. But for every person, it doesn't mean you're a bad person, doesn't mean you're less of a person if you decide, you know what, it's just not right for me. And I want to live the quality of life I can for as long as I can. And it's different for every individual. So I don't want anyone to walk away from here feeling bad because of the choices that they're making. But it is different for every single person. And, you know, Kevin, you are an inspiration. You do show what is possible with a lot of work, a lot of energy. But there are some people that wonder that, for example, with my dad, that, you know, you're pushing yourself, and then what sucks is then you end up with that need for a hip replacement. My dad ended up falling, and he's never been able to get back as active as he was, despite him trying to push himself. And so he ended up with yet more plaque progression in his heart, another heart cath with a couple branches of his right coronary that had increased in stenosis to the point that it was in fact affecting his ability to breathe properly, as the right coronary sends blood flow into the lungs. And so I know you can't live your life in fear, but it's tough mentally to deal, you know, with getting back once you do have that type of injury to where you were.
Somehow you got to maintain a sense of humor and appreciate what you do have right now. I think that's the trick. Eventually, entropy is going to tear us down. This reminds me of my favorite bumper sticker, which is eat right, exercise, die anyway, which is true. We're all going to have to face death eventually. But I would say let's think about what we have now and enjoy life now, because that's what we have. One book that helped me a lot with that was The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle. It turned off a lot of this negative talk in my head. And I would say I tend to live in the moment. I live in the present and not think so much about what's down the road, even though, you know, I like to, you know, prepare for the worst and hope for the best. So, yeah, it's each have to choose. You're right. We're all different biochemically, mentally, our experience of life, and at least, you know, there you don't have to feel like you can't do anything. You definitely can.
I appreciate that. And Kevin, I don't want to take up too much of your time. We really appreciate you joining us. If there aren't any, I'll give one last chance for final questions from Kevin or for Kevin, and then we're going to wrap up for the day. But I appreciate everyone joining us. Does anyone else want to jump in with any other comments or questions? Joshua, maybe if there's any other comments coming in from YouTube or any of our other social media, it would be great to bring them in now. I'm going to double check really quick and see.
So I got a quick one. So would you suggest like starting off at a 5K or a 10K or one of those, just to get motivated enough to continue to go and advance? Not all of us are going to be able to run a marathon. We know that, but are those good ideas?
Yeah, I mean, I do the local races, which are, you know, they range from 5Ks to 10 miles, the local runs, and you can walk them. There's people at the back. So you start by walking the race or walk running the race. And then after a while, you might be able to slowly run the whole thing if you are a runner, but you need to run right. You need to run injury free, low impact. Running is very prone to injury. And this is why I do quite a bit of water running, which is not so injury prone. In fact, it's pretty safe. I cross train. The bike is probably the most dangerous thing I do because of the traffic. And I would say you pick a 5K, which is 3 miles basically, and be prepared to walk part of it and just see how you feel. And if you get to the point you can complete, you know, a 5K local run race and you meet people there, then you can slowly build from there. But you have to know how to run. You have to know how to run without injuring yourself with low impact running. I think there's a video on my site about that, but I always recommend if anybody wants to run, they should read Jack Hagee's book, Running with the Whole Body, and they should study Chi Running by Danny Dreyer, because they're really good. And when I had my third knee surgery, 2 of which were due to running injuries, I studied those 2 things and converted to a low impact shuffle run. And doing that, I managed to run the Boston Marathon in 67. So you can actually get up a pretty good pace. Qualifying for Boston was probably the toughest race I ever ran in my life, the qualifier itself. The actual race is a big party. But yeah, just find a local 5K, which is probably the shortest distance, 3 miles, and be prepared to walk, run it, talk to people at the back of the pack. Oh, and by the way, Doug, you actually meet the nicest people at the back of the pack.
He's trying to unmute so he can comment on that.
And when I raced bicycles and I swam for Lamar University back in when I went to college. So yeah, those are the ones, we talked while we ran, and the biking,
Yeah.
it was a competitive spirit, but it was all of us together.
So you were a college swimmer?
Yes.
Well, you'll swim better than I ever will. I mean, when I meet a college swimmer, they can look completely out of shape and they can swim me into the ground. The college swimmers are really something. And
What type
so,
of bike do you have?
what kind of bike?
Yes, sir.
I have two bikes. I have a Guru, which is carbon fiber, and it's kind of mushy, and I have a what is it? A Karma, which is a titanium alloy bike, which is really good, especially for hill climbs. But they're both custom bikes that cost thousands of dollars that were designed to fit me personally using a bike fit. So they're high end bikes, but you know the bike I ride now cost me $9,000 years ago, and my car cost me $2,000. So that tells you where my priorities lie.
For those that want to bike, just your normal bikes just to start off are good, aren't they?
You can get a perfectly good bike for $300 if it fits you, but it's got to fit. Fit is more important than components, more important than anything. The bike has to fit. And you can get a bike fit for a couple of $100 probably, or in a bike shop for less than that. And then you'll make sure that everything is right for your frame, because people often have bikes that are too long and then they get lower back pain, right? Or they have a saddle too low or frame too small and their knees are too close to their body, which is a really bad thing. So the bike fit is more important than the bike. I mean, one of my sons got a $300 bike that fit him well, and it was as good as my $9,000 bike for him. It's just that my $9,000 bike probably weighed half of it and made a big difference to my races. But I mean, that's what I did. But no, you can get a very good bike if you look around. But you got to get a bike fit, and a bike fit will tell you how long to have the top tube, how far from the pedals, where to put your feet where to attach your cleats to the pedals. The bike fit is really important.
And what about your shoes for running?
Running? Yeah, it's funny. I run my shoes into the ground until they fall apart. Basically, I'm interested in having a piece of rubber under my feet to protect my feet, and have a wide toe box. And that's basically it. If you read Born to Run, don't run barefoot unless you want injuries, but there's some pretty good stuff in there about running. So I wear shoes until they start falling apart. They're generally zero, they're pretty flat shoes, and I let my feet do the work. I just have a piece of rubber under my feet to stop me cutting my feet. So that's my approach. I don't listen to the shoe industry trying to change your shoes every few hundred miles. They're just making big bucks. Spread your feet, use your feet, make sure your feet have room to move, but don't slide around. For a while, I had PAD associated corns in my right foot. And the way I got rid of those was to dump my socks. And so now I don't use socks in my shoes. I put socks in my hiking boots to keep my feet warm when it rains, but I can still feel they kind of rub my feet. So I dump the socks. So shoes, wide toe box, comfortable shoes, whatever works for you. You might get some help from a PT on advice if you're you want to move properly. You don't want to heel strike. That's important. You don't want to push off your toes too hard. That causes injuries. Supination and pronation are not such a big problem. Alignment and having your hip rotators right is really important. So I would say shoes that fit you comfortably with plenty of room to move, and steady body movement. For that, Feldenkrais is the best tool. I don't know, did that answer you can run in your shoes till they fall apart, as far as I'm concerned. Yeah.
Excellent.
Is anybody left? Are we just talking to ourselves here, Doug?
Nope. We have quite a few people that are still in our live studio audience here. And we have Josh that is asking, actually making the comment, 6 years to learn to run. Wow. How did that go? How did you maintain any sort of hope that you were going to be able to run in the way that you wanted to run over the course of 6 years, there had to have been micro goals. They always say that it's great to have, you were mentioning earlier in the show, yes, have that goal, have that marathon, but over the course of 6 years, when you're trying to learn, in the way you said it, learn to run, how did you maintain a hope and maintain the course?
Okay,
Did you
there were
set these smaller milestones?
Yeah, there were two phases in my learning to run. The first phase was before I had PAD, and I had to learn actually how to run without injuring myself. And I had a problem of guarding a broken ankle that caused me lots of trouble. All that's listed on my website. So learning to run originally back in my 50s so I could run a marathon, there I had to get rid of that guarding injury and learn how to run without impact stress and not have any more knee surgeries, because that really sets your training back. Anyway, but learning to run with PAD is this endless battle of trying to fine tune the way I run. And I learned one thing after another, which is in the book. First of all, starting with low impact, and then starting with, softening my feet. And I was already running with my whole body. And then the spreading of my toes and the contracting of my toes. These things I gradually added to my skills over a period of 6 or 7 years. And now they're kind of built into the way I walk and run. But I'm always looking for the next trick. Oh, there's one trick I always forget to mention: the power of your mind. One thing I do quite often, especially when I'm lying in bed and I feel the flow to my feet isn't that great, I'll wriggle my toes and I will mentally send blood to my feet. And I am sure it actually helps. There is actually a power within our mind to improve our body's blood flow and our strength. I know that imaginary exercise is used to help people get out of bed after they're confined to a hospital bed for a long time. So never forget the power of your mind to actually improve the way your body functions, because it's a conversation between your mind and the rest of the body. And so I would say it took 6, 7 years to be able to run again, not run like I used to, but run enough that I can complete at least for now, a half Ironman race. But I just kept adding new tricks to my smorgasbord of ideas to improve blood flow. Did that answer the question?
I think so. I think that you did. Yep. Josh says you did, which is great. Is there anything else? It's a very, big book, but I'm wondering if there's any other before we run and we close up shop for the day, and let everyone, out and about to enjoy some of the sunshine. Any other tips? You mentioned that there were 9 or 10 different tips, including the toes, including, no socks, things like that. Is there one more that you can give us to close out the show?
I think setting steady goals is very helpful in monitoring your goals. And it's extremely important to monitor how the blood flow is getting to your toes with an O2 sats meter, and learn to relax into pain. Remember, there's good pain and bad pain. And if you fight the pain as opposed to relaxing into the pain and watching it, you'll find the pain can't control you like it does. So having the right relationship to the pain of claudication or numb feet, it's a mental game, and make it a game, not work. And it's a conversation with your body. And so I would say not letting pain cripple you and prevent you from doing the things you want is really, really helpful.
Thank you so much. We really appreciate you, Kevin Morgan. He is an amazing friend to the Global PAD Association and advisor. He's also the author of 2 books you can find on Amazon: How to Train for Aging and How to Fight the Crippling Pain of Peripheral Artery Disease. You can also get a subscription to his newsletter for free. Also, he said he has ebooks for free for his books on his website, inspirationalselfhelpbooks.com. Thank you so much again, Kevin, for joining us. You're always an inspiration, and we appreciate you being here.